Hugh, starting with you, it seems like you and Paul are in agreement about that there is fine tuning, that there are these laws, that Paul even says that he personally feels that they need to be transcendent. Where you both land, even though you're looking at the same evidence and very much in agreement, Hugh, your bread and butter and what you've done for decades now is you're saying that this all points to and necessitates a mind, an intention, a creator. And Paul, it sounds like you land like these are magnificent, and our universe and multiverse are magnificent, but it does not necessitate a mind. And so I just want you both to wrap up, beginning with you, Hugh, is why do you feel, looking at all of the same evidence as Paul, why do you feel that this necessitates a mind?
Yeah, I'm not sure that Paul and I are that far apart even on that issue. But, I've written for years that if we actually look at the multiple purposes that we see the fine tuning implying, number one, this can be a guide to future scientific research. I've been arguing that the anthropic principle has predictive power. I can think of at least a half dozen different ways that this fine tuning can be demonstrated to have predictive power. And my motivation in showing that predictive power, that scientific success, is basically to draw the scientific community to consider the metaphysical implications. I mean, if this really does have predictive power in multiple ways, with multiple concluding purposes, then this really does point to a mind that's got particular purposes for human beings. And if God indeed created the universe and created us human beings so we can fulfill specified purposes, I think it's crucial we discover what those purposes are. I mean, that's our destiny. And I think the anthropic principle can guide us towards discovering that purpose and that destiny. And that's something that the authors of the Bible have stated thousands of years ago. But to quote Feng Liji in China, he says, science has now advanced to the point that what was purely a theological issue is now an issue for theoretical and observational physics. So let's go for it.
And I don't know if we fully got into why it necessitates a mind, but Paul, since we only got 15 minutes left with you, why don't you just kind of fill us in on why you don't think it has to have a mind behind it and intelligence behind it. And then if you want, we'll jump into some Q&A before you leave us.
Yeah, of course. Well, the first thing is I should reiterate that I do take mind seriously. A lot of people say, well, look at consciousness, it'll go away when we understand it properly. It's all just molecules. So I do take mind seriously. And then the question is a sort of super mind that somehow made the universe as it is. And I've always had a natural antipathy to the answer, well, how do we explain this? How do we explain that? Well, God did it, end of conversation. So I never want there to be an end of conversation, because I want to ask, well, what about this God? And why is God the way God is? And all those sorts of problems you get into. And so I am a genuine agnostic, in the sense that agnostic even within science, that all these ideas I find sort of thrilling and interesting. I think probably at the end of the day, I feel historians will look back and say, well, they were having a sort of stupid argument with the wrong conceptual framework all along. They should have been asking this question and not that question, or they should have had this idea and not that idea. Imagine going back to talk to somebody at the time of Newton, in invoking quantum mechanics as an explanation for the decay of a nucleus. We don't know what you're talking about. We don't have those concepts. And so I find a lot of the discussion about, between science and religion very sterile for that reason. It sort of gets bogged down in these things. And I just feel that we need to, and I think we have here, elevated the discussion to a higher plane. So I take mind seriously, whether it's something that emerges later on in the sense of consciousness, free will, and so on, or whether it's somehow embedded in the nature of reality. I feel uneasy using a lot of these terms So what I tend to say is that I think when we look at the universe, there seems to be a scheme of things, a rational scheme that we can, at least in part, uncover through this wonderful thing we call science and mathematics. So it's the universe is not just a haphazard conjunction of odds and ends sort of thrown together. It is a coherent unity with an underlying scheme. Whether a scheme amounts to things like purpose or mind, these are all very difficult terms to deal with. And what I will sometimes say to people is we always take from daily life concepts and project it onto the universe. And one of these is mechanism. Human beings make machines. So is the universe a gigantic machine? I mean, that was very fashionable at the time of Newton. Now people say, the pinnacle of our technology are computers. So is the universe just a computer, gigantic computers? It's a nature as a computation. So what we're doing is we're projecting onto nature our human categories. Well, one of these human categories is being alive or being conscious and so on. And we talk about living organisms have purposes. So does the universe have a purpose? Well, I would say the universe isn't a machine, it isn't a computer, and it isn't a living organism. But it has some aspects of mechanism and computation and purpose. We see them reflected in nature, but we're really lacking a sort of grand unified theory of existence that would give context to the concepts that I just outlined.
As Hawking said, the theory of everything, right?
Well, yes, and in fact, when I quit this fascinating discussion, I'm going to be teaching a class on the theory of everything. Is this just a pipe dream? Can there be such a theory? What would it mean? And it wouldn't be everything, because it wouldn't tell you how you're going to vote in the next election or anything of that sort. But it might tie together these more profound things. Maybe if it exists, maybe it exists, but we will never be able to apprehend it.